And we're live.
Yep, we are live. All right, well, we will have people be joining us here shortly, but since this is also visible on a replay, we'll start with the introductions. I'd like to welcome you all to this month's Mind Your Own Business Hangout. We're going to be talking all through sorts of different topics that are going to help you as a professional or an emerging professional photographer, and we're going to be exploring strategies on how to attract new customers to your business, as well as how to keep those existing customers. My name is Rich Harrington. I am the publisher of photofocus.com, and joining me as co-host is Skip Cohen. Skip, why don't you give folks a little bit about your background?
Oh, my background. I'm probably best known for one of three things. One being a complete knucklehead. Number two being a past president of Hasselblad USA. And number three being president of Rangefinder WPPI. So I continue to have this amazing career. And in 2009, I headed off on my own. And I was just tired of living vicariously through all of you guys as entrepreneurs and decided it was time to go start a consulting and educational support business. And that's Skip Cohen University, and here I am.
Excellent. And we have a special guest today. We're joined by Lisa Robinson. I'll let her tell you a little bit about her background, but Lisa is both a professional photographer and a writer for PhotoFocus. Lisa, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, like Rich said, my company is Lovesome Photography, and I started back in 2006, founded the company then after several years of assisting for other types of photographers and trying to figure out really what I wanted to do, and eventually figured out it was weddings. And yeah, haven't looked back since. So thankfully, things are going great, and I love being able to serve my clients in the ways that they need service for their wedding day and their wedding photography, and all of that comes with it. So.
Excellent, and we're gonna dig in. I just wanted to remind folks, if you are watching home at home live, we are going to have a giveaway. We are running a question and answer, so feel free to post any questions that you'd like answers to during this hangout, and we'll pick from those questions later to give away a copy of Creative Cloud's photography plan from Adobe. So thank you to them for that. And I'll start off with a simple one just to get the ball rolling. Lisa, when it came time to go out on your own, how did you find that second customer? The first customer is not hard. It's usually a friend or a family member, but how did you go to customer number two? What was the strategies you employed to find some of those first people you did work for?
Honestly, I think coming from a background in retail, having worked for Apple, they instilled a really good message of how to relate to the client, how to just be yourself and be kind and give them the information that they need, not necessarily anything that they don't. So with my first client, I very much listened to what they needed and met those needs, and she was beyond thrilled that she told one of her friends who was in the process of wedding planning, and they hired me, like, on the spot.
That's excellent.
So, and then from there, that client, it snowballed to about a second client gave me 4 other clients because she was so thrilled with it. And so really, I think it comes down to really listening to what your clients want and delivering that. And at the beginning, it was hard to reconcile that with what I wanted to do and what the client that was hiring me would want. And so over the years, I sort of fine-tuned that and sort of found my own voice. But ultimately, you've got to serve your clients' needs, and then they'll be thrilled, and that word of mouth from your customer is honestly the best referral you can get and source of business you can get anywhere.
Skip?
Well, Lisa just hit on a great quote that I used a while back on Twitter, or maybe it was for a blog post, and I can't remember who owns it. So the quote essentially went, great customers won't only talk about you, but they'll insist that their friends come to meet you or walk through your door. And I know especially in the wedding business, the younger the bride, the more friends she has that are getting married. The younger the bride, the more likely she has siblings that are going to get married. And one of the things that so many photographers, I think, forget about, especially when you're just starting out, if you really do, and Lisa, you hit it right on the head there in terms of, spending time listening to your clients. If you match the mindset of those very early on clients,
Mm-hmm.
and then make it a point to just continue to do that, this is a word of mouth business, and there's no way to measure the value of that father that's got 3 daughters that are going to get married
Yes.
over the next few years. In fact, I'm curious, Lisa, are you able to just take a quick guess as to what part of your business is repeat business?
From similar
Or
families
referral business, yeah.
close to 80%.
All right, there it is.
Yeah.
Well, that brings
In
up
one way or another. It's funny, it's gotten to a point now. I've done I usually do a bridal show here and there, the big expos. And I'm getting people that come by, they walk past my booth and they point at a picture and they're like, that's so and so. And they find out they've worked with them, they know them, and like it's a booking right there. It's done. It's amazing how it works.
Well, let's talk about that because that's a bit of a scary experience. We're presented with these opportunities to showcase our work.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a trade show, you go to a bridal show, you're standing in front of customers, you put on an open house, and at the time, it's kind of like, okay, I'm spending a lot of money, I'm here surrounded by competition. How do you convince yourself that it's worth doing, or how do you get the most value out of doing something like that?
I set up a rule for myself that as long as I turned a profit, I would continue doing them. And if that show didn't turn a profit for me, I wouldn't go back to that show.
But how do you measure that? Is it by bookings that happen on the spot?
No, because a lot of people won't book literally that day, but I can book a consultation with them and then at that consultation convert into a signed contract because there's too much chaos going on that day. But I measure it by every time someone comes in, I ask them where they found me, how they found me, was it at a bridal show? Often, if it's at a show, I remember them because I'll get an email within a week of the show from that client saying, hey, I met you at the show, I wanna schedule a consultation. So I keep track of that in all my files as to where that person came from and who they knew and who their referral was and all of that.
Excellent. And to that end, as you're tracking all this information,
mm-hmm.
Why is being this organized helpful? What do you learn over time? When you go back and you look at this, can you spot your best customers? Are you seeing trends? Which shows have the best return for you?
Yeah.
How do you put all this effort into keeping this information organized?
Because in the heat of the moment, like you can get really emotional about a show. Maybe one show is particularly stressful and hard, but if you go back and look at the numbers, it actually produced really well for you. So sometimes your memory doesn't always correlate with what actually paid off best. I have clients that I love to pieces, but overall it hasn't really panned out into a ton of referral business. Maybe they've referred me, but who they referred me didn't actually book. Maybe who they referred me to was too far away and didn't want to pay for a travel fee for, whatever it might be. And some clients that I never necessarily super clicked with and super bonded with, they've referred me 5 or 6 people, so who have all booked. So sometimes it's helpful to look back and remind myself that you don't always see the down the road payoff based on that immediate emotion and what you're experiencing at that time.
If you guys are watching at home, thank you for joining us. Some of you have just tuned in. My name is Rich Harrington. I'm the publisher of PhotoFocus, and today Skip Cohen and I are sitting down with Lisa Robinson, and we're talking about some strategies to win customers for your wedding or portrait business, and also how to retain them so they keep coming back or they lead to referrals. We do have the question and answer pod open, so if you are on the Google Plus page, you could post a comment there, or if you've launched this into a standard window, you should see a Q&A section. Feel free to ask any questions that you have there. We will be giving away a copy of Adobe's Creative Cloud Photography Plan later at the end of the program to someone who's asked a question, who's hung with us until the end. So thank you guys very much for joining us. Skip, why don't you take it for a little bit? I know I could see you got some thoughts brewing over there.
Well, Lisa was talking about something a minute ago, and I'm curious if she's ever tried this. I have a friend in Las Vegas who is a realtor, and when he and his wife don't get a listing, with somebody they've interviewed, and they feel they've invested some time, he makes a really nice phone call to them and just says, "Look, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm glad you found a realtor, but I'm curious. You could help us a lot in our business if you just give me a feel for why you didn't book with us." And I always thought that was a great way for wedding and every now and then portrait photographers who have actually interviewed. It doesn't happen so much on the portrait side, but it does on weddings. And Lisa, I'm just curious, when you don't get a booking, do you ever
Hmm.
check back with the client, and do you even like the idea of whether or not something like that would work and give you any insight as to what you were missing that they didn't see?
No, I love that idea. I think in this business, it's really important to always self-examine and look at areas. It's your own business, it's your baby, you're close to it, you feel like everything you're doing is right, and sometimes that's not always the case. It's not always matching up with what your end goals are, and you're too close to it to see. So I think that's definitely a huge, valuable tool to use. And I would say I often do it. I don't do it religiously every single time. There have been some meetings that maybe didn't go as well. Maybe we were just struggling to see eye to eye. Like the way they were describing coverage wasn't quite the way I work, and I'm trying to come to a middle ground, and we never quite got there. So those things, I understand why those clients wouldn't book. But when I feel like I have a very good rapport going with clients, and we're finishing each other's sentences, we're on the same
Right.
track, on the same page, and then all of a sudden they fall off the face of the earth, and I'm going, well, what happened? I will contact them. I'll check in. I'll ask how you're doing. I'll ask if they have other questions. I'll recap what we talked about in the meeting. And if I get something back saying that they went in another direction, I will respond back and thank them for their time. But ask, hey, what is it that I could improve? Is there any particular reason that stuck out with you as to why you wanted to make a different choice? And it reminds me in a way of going back to school when you'd have critique day, when you put
That's
up all
right.
your work that you think is so
Right.
wonderful and you're so proud and it's perfect, it's amazing, and somebody's like, yeah, I don't get it. And sometimes people don't get it. But it's nice to know what it is that they don't get. Not all the time. I don't always get responses. I think sometimes people are a little put off by that and they're a little awkward, and people don't like to let other people down. So sometimes I don't get a response, but often when I do, it's usually comes down to price. And to me, that means that there is still somewhere in there that I didn't get my value out to them. So it gives me some information, but it doesn't give me all the information that I'm really seeking for when I ask that question.
Well,
So, go ahead.
I'm sorry. All right, Rich, you want me to go?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, one of the things that again, everybody forgets. Well, actually, I don't know that everybody forgets. I think too many photographers forget the ability of a consumer today. I mean, when I think about going back to my early Hasselblad days, and that was the late '80s, and a huge part of our business was all thanks to wedding photographers that were shooting Hasselblad.
Mm-hmm.
The ability for a photographer to be able to show their work and have people see it was limited to what they showed at a bridal show or who came through the door. I mean, the internet today is a blessing and a curse. The internet
Yeah.
gives you as a photographer access to thousands of potential clients, but it also gives all your competitors access.
Yes.
And I'm curious about some of the things that you're doing to keep the word out and to keep your name out there, because the industry, and I know I hear photographers all the time whining about Uncle Harry and Debbie Digital and you name it, for all the soccer
Uncle
moms out
Bob.
there. Uncle Bob, that's it.
Uncle Bob.
There's all the Uncle Bobs out there that are stealing my business. And the reality is that our industry on the wedding side has always been, or at least I'm going to go back at least the last 20 years, 50% of the industry have been weekend warriors, part-time.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there are some outstanding part-time photographers out there who I've worked with over the years. But they had another day job that picked up their benefits and insurance and health and other things, and chose to be wedding photographers on the weekend. Just because you're part-time doesn't mean that you're not good at what you do. So moving right along, how do you keep the word out? What are some of the vehicles you're using to get the word out to your potential target audience?
I do a lot of sharing on Facebook, working on my blog, which I'm not always perfect at. I'm trying to get more regular with that. I'm good in the off season, and then when it's wedding season, all heck breaks loose, and it's just it's hard to do that. I do a lot of networking with other photographers, and I think through talking with them online and that sort of thing, it helps get the word out as far as what I do, a more clear message. If they have any referrals for me when they're not booked, by them knowing me more and having more of a social media presence, they know how to refer the right type of client to me, the person who's looking for my style or looking for the types of personalities I work well with. So that's really all I got with that.
And one thing you recently did, you went through a rebranding of your company, changing its name a little bit. What brought that about? You were in business for a good while, and you decided to, I don't want to say start over, but you sort of honed your edge a little bit as to what your focus was. You went from a somewhat generic name, not a bad name, to something very specific that described what you did. How did you reach that point, and how did customers respond to the rebranding?
The rebranding has been amazing, and I kind of kicked myself for not doing it earlier.
Tell them where you went from and where you came to.
I hear that from all kinds of people, and I know I should have listened to it sooner. The company started in 2006 as Softbox Media, and it's two divisions between me and my husband, Ian Robinson, who does a lot of motion graphics and post-production work with video, and then I have the photography end, and we both use softboxes to create beautiful light, and we thought it was a great, happy, hunky-dory, shared company name, and we went on from there. At the time, I liked it because it was a bit of a talking point. It was an unusual name. Most photographers use their first and last name as their business branding, which for some reason I've never clicked with that idea. I always felt like it was something more than just about me, so I didn't want to name it my name. And then as time went on, I just kind of felt like I was tired of explaining it, and I felt like people were asking me for all kinds of corporate work and types of work that I didn't necessarily want to focus on. So I decided to go in for a rebrand. I was looking for a studio space to finally get out of my house studio and into like some legit real storefront, and came across the word lovesome in the dictionary, and it means inspiring love, displaying warmth and affection, and lovable. And those are all the things that I relate to within weddings, and even in the boudoir work that I do as well. But when I look back on my images and I look at what people say to me about why they love my images, it's because they're always saying, oh, people look so happy, that you get such genuine moments, and man, I just want to be right there. And so to me, the word lovesome, finally I had this aha moment, like, yes, that's what I do with photography, that's what I want to do with photography, and that makes sense to rebrand as that name. So I did, and it's been amazing. It's been really well received. My past clients have come back saying, oh, this is amazing, I love it, I'm so glad you did this. It makes sense. Everybody says it just makes sense. So I'm really happy that I finally took that really scary step and did that.
Well, we didn't change names, but we recently updated our logo and tied to moving to a new location. And just the chance to re-engage every one of our past customers and send them a notice of our new location is leading to new business. I'm amazed and kicking myself of like, okay, we really should have sent some snail mail a while ago, like sending out those postcards and just letting people know. Now, we had a good question come in from Frederick, sort of tied to some of the things you were just talking about. Do you find that you do all of your own marketing, or do you see some benefit of hiring other people when it comes time to either help market you or to do anything as far as, you know, the branding services? How much do you feel is your wheelhouse, and how much do you turn to an outside person for support?
Well, before, under the old branding, I'd kind of done everything myself, or Ian and I had done everything ourselves, and because we have a background in that. I have a background in design and photography and film and all those things. So I was like, oh, I know these things. I got this. But again, it's like you're too close to it in a way. So with this rebrand, it was the first time that I did outsource, and I did, go to a designer for the logo. I've since actually started using people to help rebuild the new website and work on the SEO and all of that stuff. And I'm so thankful that I'm finally done being stubborn and trying to be, wear a million hats. And it's really paid off. Paying out money, yes, it's more money. But ultimately, the return on having paid out that money to allow people who are experts in what they do, allowing them to do what they do, has let me be a photographer more. And that makes everything so much better.
Skip?
Yeah, well, Lisa mentioned the whole issue of farming some things out. I just want to remind everybody, because we all have the same problem. We're all too close to our own businesses. Mm-hmm. We don't see it. I mean, one of the things that I started doing a long time ago, and every now and then I'll just do one when I'm working with a photographer, is helping them rewrite their about pieces. Their bios. We have some of the worst bios in the industry, and it's not that they're a bad bio, it's that they're sharing the wrong information with the client. And the client, the potential bride, for example, doesn't care what gear you shot with. They don't care what PPA or WPPI awards you've won, because they don't know what either of the groups are anyway. They don't care how you got started in photography. What they do care about is, can you be trusted to capture the most important day in their life? And that's going to come out in a bio that's got a little romance in it, that talks about why you love being a photographer, and is abused and overused expression as it is, why do you love helping people capture memories? And I read so many of these bios, and they're listing just all kinds of things. I had one a while back of a photographer who wanted to be a sports photographer with kids. And he went into this whole dissertation about how he wasn't big enough to play football, and the coach put a camera in his hand. Now, that information would be perfect if you were addressing a room of 1,000 photographers talking about how you got started. It's not what mom wants to hear, and I've said this before on other podcasts and other things Rich and I have done together. Women make 98% of the purchase decisions to hire a photographer in the portrait social categories. So you need to appeal to mom, to the bride, and you need to be talking about why you love being a photographer, and not getting wrapped up in just being too close to your business and putting all these objective things down. And along with that also goes photographers that insist on writing in the third person. She is an award-winning. He is an award-winning. I mean, write it like an artist statement. Keep it in the first person, and either use your real signature or a facsimile of your signature, so it has some personality to it. Plus, I'm on a big campaign lately. I'm so fed up with lousy headshots. If you're a photographer and your headshot is really crappy on your site, then what does that say to the client? Get a great headshot. Get a shot of you with a camera in your hands. Maybe it's a shot of you photographing a client, so you've got the client in the background slightly out of focus. So I love the idea of photographers farming some things out now and then, because you're too close to your own businesses to be able to see it. And Lisa, even though you've got a background in design, I think having another pair of eyes, take a look at
totally.
it, it's more objective. Yeah, it gives you a
I would
different perspective.
I would have never come up with what my designer came up with in a million years. And it's funny, even it was the first thing he sent me, and I rejected it right away. And we went through all these iterations, and I was like, oh, I'm being that client. I'm so sorry I'm being that client. And then we eventually looped back to the first one, and yeah, it was an amazing process of self-discovery. Just really realizing that, my own little bubble isn't always big enough to hold everything that's right in it. I need to let other people come in and help and change in order to grow.
Well, we have another question from one of the folks listening. And remember, if you are tuning in live, feel free to post questions either on the Google Plus page or in the Q&A section, which you can do on both YouTube and the Google Plus player. We'll be drawing from those questions later today to win a copy of a year of the Adobe Creative Cloud Photography Plan. So thanks to Adobe for offering that up to help our listeners. And we had a question from Philip, and he's saying, what are your opinions about doing an event, say, for example, family portraits at a Mother's Day brunch for finding potential clients? And what sort of materials do you bring along to events like this to get your name out? Lisa, do you have any experiences outside of shows where you have found good marketing opportunities or good leads?
Honestly, I don't like doing other events outside of my genre. I did for a long time. I had a friend who was like, "Oh, can you come do this, or can you come do that, or oh, we just need headshots, and oh, there's this family portrait day. Can you be the sponsoring photographer?" I just never found that for me really translated back into weddings. I found that it would translate back into more of the same kind of inquiries for the same kind of work. So if you want to be doing that work, I think that's great. And it could be a potentially good thing for you. But if you're trying to do another type of work in order to get another type of work, I don't think that necessarily makes a whole lot of sense. But always have a business card on you. Sometimes you can meet the most random person in a totally unexpected place, and they're the perfect client for you, and they have a need for your services. And if you don't have a card, you're screwed. So I just always make sure to have a card on me. And that's probably about the biggest thing I just carry around as far as marketing materials.
Yeah, no, I've wedged those into about every pocket: my wallet, my business bag, my briefcase, the back of my phone. It's amazing how, as simple as that is the card that you need. Skip, what's your take on that? Do you see doing any of these events?
I'm a big fan. I disagree with Lisa a little bit, but I also agree with her point, because you do wind up. It's sort of like be careful what you wish for. And if you're off doing portraits at a Mother's Day event at some venue in town, you do run the risk of creating a sidebar business that you didn't really want. On the other side of the coin, I absolutely believe photographers need to get involved in other events to create business in any category when it comes to community involvement. So offering your services, for example, as some kind of a portrait program, helping, I don't know, maybe it's a Veterans Day, something in the community. Maybe it's something to do with a charity. There's a photographer in Phoenix that launched a project with Phoenix Children's Hospital, Corey Schwartz, that wound up having 40 people involved. I think 10 or 15 of them were other photographers, and they essentially wound up doing a hardbound day in the life book of the hospital that became a fundraiser. Well, it also made it onto the 6 o'clock news, and it wound up having a mind of its own in terms of creating awareness. Now, that falls under the category of cause-related marketing and giving back to the community. That's where I think it does make a lot of sense. On the other hand, I also think there are times when you do need to look outside the community, outside your specialty, providing what you're doing is tying in with the demographics. And I think there are some things you can get away with doing, like a portrait day or a pet day. I know there's one of the legendary ones in the photo industry is Vicki Toffer's Dog Days of Summer that she launched probably 5 or 6 years ago. Now, she was a children and family photographer, primarily kids, but she knew there was a high correlation between pets and families and kids. So she started a program to do Dog Days of Summer. It tied in with the Peoria Animal Shelter. You had to bring a bag of food to get your free 5x7. And in the end, she wound up doing, she and her staff did 150-some sessions with 40 people on the wait list, and it created an unbelievable awareness for her business. Now, the other challenge is, to Lisa's point, 3 years later, she's one of the best-known pet photography studios in the area, so it went in a different direction, but it wound up creating more business for her in her traditional family business too. So, you know, I agree with Lisa, but I think there are times when it does make sense to get more involved to create more business.
Well, I think that this leads to an interesting point, and one of the things that I had to learn the hard way, and this actually ties into one of the questions we have sitting in the queue, is deciding what business I wanted to be in versus who I liked working with. And you know, a lot of my clients are nonprofits, and I love doing public service announcements and commercials and fundraising pieces and that style of photography and video projects. But I found that sometimes they would ask me to do projects that I really had no interest in, but I liked them as a person or as a client, and I said, okay. You know, Frederick asked sort of a similar question, which says, you know, if it is outside your genre, you know, would it make sense to grow your business and either hire another photographer or bring in somebody that you've partnered with before or that you know in the community and, you know, have them do the job for you versus just handing it off as a straight referral? Do either of you have any feelings about, you know, staying laser focused versus maybe growing, you know, the business with others or by collaboration, and how you balance that out? Lisa, do you want to start?
Sure. I've done both. I am more comfortable with putting things out as a referral. I feel like if I can refer somebody who's a knockout job and does an awesome piece of work for them, and it's more in that person's wheelhouse, I feel like that original client's going to come back to me because they're going to see me as a perceived value as being knowledgeable. So maybe they now understand that I don't do that kind of stuff, but they know I'm knowledgeable and will come back to me for, say, something else or something more specific to what I do. So I think referring out in that way is a good point. It is an interesting thought to decide to maybe expand and maybe bring on associate photographers who have different areas of expertise. If you're interested in growing into from like a micro business to more of a traditional small business sense, you know, maybe 5-10 employees, something like that, then that most definitely is a great route to kind of start getting your feet wet with. You know, it's through networking events, align yourself with other photographers who have other specialties than you, get to know them, get to know their work, and if it will stand up to whatever standards you've set for your brand. And then by all means, maybe look into it legally as far as what you need to do from that standpoint, taxes, paperwork, all that jazz, liability insurance, and hire on another photographer, hire on an associate, and market into those different little genres. Maybe you've got your portrait guy in your studio, maybe you got your boudoir person in the studio, maybe you got your wedding person. It could make sense if that's how you want to grow your business.
Well, you recently invested in a storefront type business, and you know, I recently dumped way too much of my money into building out my studios, and the fact of the matter is I just can't use them the amount of time that I personally need them for the projects that I'm doing. And so it makes sense for me to either allow others to rent that space or to have other people on my staff who are also working on projects work on those. But we still find that you can choose either the types of people you want to work with or the types of work that you want to do, but it's kind of hard to choose both. It's, you can't say I only want to work with nice people I enjoy and do this genre, because it seems like those nice people I enjoy have other needs besides just one genre. Or, I could stay laser focused, but then I have to work with people that I don't like working with. And now, as I'm, entering in, I've been working since I was 11 years old. So, after 30 plus years of working, I'm starting to get more and more particular of choosing the projects that I do. Not that I can always choose, but I think that gets a little bit challenging. Skip, what's your take on this? You've worked with a lot of photographers of different styles.
I'm a huge fan of diversity, but it's also unique to each photographer's skill set. The hierarchy of why people hire a photographer in the portrait social categories are brides, babies, pets. That's the big three. Now, after that, I'm guessing that it probably falls in with children, family, seniors, and then boudoir. And if you wanted if I'm wrong, so what? That's still the top 7 or 8 categories.
Yeah.
The reality, yeah, somebody will email me later and say, no, I think number 5 should be. But
Yes.
that's
Cakes. You left out cakes.
yeah. And I started talking about this going back probably 6, 7 years ago. We were in a horrible recession, and my argument was that no photographer should ever say no to somebody coming through the door. Now, if you don't have the skill set, you don't need to say no, but this is where Lisa's comment about being comfortable with a referral comes in, and this is why your network becomes so important. I think your network, especially today, is critical, so that you've always got other people that complement skills that you don't have sort of on call, and when you are stuck, you don't ever want to say no to a client. Tony Corbell tells a great story about if you're standing in the middle of Disney and you say to one of the Disney staff there, you know, what time is the light parade? And they'll say, well, the electric light parade is at 9 o'clock. And then they add, and you want to stand right over there on that particular corner. It's a great spot to see the parade. They never just give you one answer. They always expand it. It's sort of like, you know, do you want fries with that? Well, I think in the same respect, when you're, and let's use Lisa as a wedding photographer, and she's got a bride who is absolutely crazy about her, and now it's 3, 4 years later, and the bride is having a baby and starting a family.
Yes.
You know, there's a logical connection there that's a great link, and it's also logical in terms of continuity in the galleries you show on your website, because brides start families, and families get pets, and families become portrait clients, and they become pet clients, and then it goes full circle, because as the kids grow up, senior photography jumps in, and then you're back and the cycle starts over again. So I'm a huge fan of suggesting that photographers latch on to a family in the same way a lot of us have latched on to family doctors, you know, optometrists, dentists. If you're fortunate enough, which I'm not, where, you know, if I still lived in the same town, I'd probably be going to the son of my dentist, who took over the practice later on. But it's building that relationship and then continuing to drive it. And I love the idea, if it's not a skill set that you want to tackle and you want to stay focused on just one specialty, there's nothing wrong with that. But I love the idea of hiring an associate and then marketing under your brand to start to expand the interest with another client base.
Well, so sort of extending this then, we've had some questions pop up. Stephanie asked a good one about, you know, what are some other ways to interact or approach these markets, you know, besides the actual weddings themselves. Lisa, you've talked about staying focused and the referral business. Is there anything you can do to prompt referrals? You know, do you flat out ask customers and request referrals? You know, give us some just strategies. Like, so you've just had a great wedding, the client is happy. What do you actively do to try to turn that into more work?
Usually I'll send it in a follow-up email. I usually towards the end of my process, and I'm picky about this, I'll send them a follow-up email asking for reviews with links to the top bridal review sites, which are theknot.com. I think they put their reviews on the weddingchannel.com, which is their subsidiary, and weddingwire.com. So I'll ask them to go and do reviews, and I'll also ask them, you know, if they have any friends or family that are in need of my services, and if you'd like me to get in touch with them. So a lot of times they'll write back and say, yes, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. I also encourage them when we're talking, just in general conversation, and before I give them their image files, about, you know, if you post these online, we'd love the shout out, you know, tag us, tweet us, any of those types of things, and their friends see that in whatever social media feed they're looking at, and often that tends to be an even better referral source for their friends, other than just asking them point blank in an email or face to face. Because maybe 6 to 12 months or a year and a half goes by, those friends just go back to their timeline like, oh, I really liked, you know, Melanie's photos. Who did that? And they go back and they look, and that's how I get that referral from that friend. So with weddings, it's a lot of waiting in a way, because most people plan for a year and a half to 2 years now. And we're seeing even more. I've got some bookings in 2017 that people have inquired about, and that seems to be the trend going. People aren't planning weddings in 6, 9, 12 months anymore. It's usually much longer. So some of it's a bit of a waiting game. But I'm definitely not afraid to ask. Weddings are a personal business. If you keep your clients at arm's length, or they perceive that you're keeping them at arm's length, then they're going to return the same thing. If you get into that bubble with them and you're personal with them and they're personal back, then they're going to very easily not think twice or bat an eye if you're like, hey, do you have anybody that needs my services? They're like, oh yeah, so-and-so. So I'm not afraid to ask for it. I mean, asking is, you don't know until you ask, so why not ask?
And speaking of asking, have you seen opportunities to grow not just the day of the ceremony, but engagement sessions, boudoir, anything else in that whole realm of, marriage and love? Are you seeing other opportunities that maybe photographers aren't thinking of?
Oh goodness.
How much are you doing engagement sessions a lot these days, or are you focusing just on the weddings?
All but one of my packages include engagement sessions, and most of my clients elect to keep that in their packages. And even if they are maybe on the fence about it after the session, they come back and they're like, oh, I'm so glad we did it, and that's helpful to me because that spreads the word to everybody else that it's a great thing to do. But the only thing I can think of is if you want to offer like a rehearsal dinner coverage or something like that. It's a little bit of extra money in your pocket with very little time invested, so it's a bonus. But as far as the wedding day goes, I see a lot of wedding photographers that are leaving albums on the table and post-wedding sales on the table and that sort of thing. But
why do you think that is? Because they don't understand printing?
Because selling in person, I think, is off-putting to a lot of people. It's not necessarily the most natural thing. And people who haven't worked in retail or worked in sales, they don't have that background to feel confident. Like, hey, here's this album. It's $2,000. Buy it. So there's this whole psychology, and this part fascinates me. I'm always reading articles on it. The psychology of understanding your value and understanding your worth and how to price things and how to believe in your pricing, and how, if you're not fully confident in it, then the client's going to pick up on that and they're not going to buy it. And then they're going to feel like it's self-fulfilling, like, oh, nobody buys a $2,000 album. It's too expensive. But if you approach it differently and you hone in on your sales skills, somebody can sell a $2,000 album really quickly, really easily. You just got to get in there. Also, a lot of photographers, I think, find a roadblock with in-person sales from the standpoint of a lot of us don't have our own spaces. I'm really fortunate. I've been in this business I've had the company for 9 years, and I only just last July got an actual space. I'd been having clients come into my home and deal with all that, cleaning the house and all that spazzing every time somebody would come over into my sales area of the house to do these sessions, and it's nerve-wracking and it's a lot of work. Or meeting in a coffee house, it's impersonal. It's not the best environment to showcase work. Lighting's not always great. It's not private. So that can be a little bit of a roadblock too. So people have to get a little bit creative in how they approach it.
Well, we got time for another couple of questions. We have one posted. If you guys are watching live and you want to post a question, feel free to do so, either on the Google Plus page or in the Q&A pod. And we'll be drawing at the end here for a copy of Creative Cloud. We had an interesting one here, and I know, Skip, both you and Lisa should have some strong opinions on this. They're asking, what are some of the best ways to network with other photographers so you can find good people to refer customers to? I'm going to throw out one of my favorite ways to network with other professionals, and that is at live events. While I enjoy online interaction, and I certainly meet people through my Twitter feed or who comment on a blog post or we cross paths in a forum or a group, I see those as opportunities to stay engaged with people that I already have some investment. Rarely does it turn the other direction, where it started online and moves into the real world. It does, but not nearly as often. And what I'm finding is by going to a local event, say, a local meeting of ASMP in my case, or a national event, or a conference like Photoshop World or WPPI, I can meet and interact with people, and it's much easier to gauge the quality of their professionals. If I'm looking for other local people, I want to see how they interact with others and talk to others and how they behave when they don't know that I'm watching. How are they responding and interacting with people around the room at this networking event? Because that tells me a lot about their person. Somebody can write a really good email or it could be perfect when they're posting and they want something from you, but I want to be able to judge their character live off to the side, and that's how I make a lot of my decisions on who to collaborate. Skip, and then Lisa, where are some places where you guys network or find other people to collaborate with that you would trust with your customers?
Well, first of all, getting active in your community being the community of photographers in the community, which is going to be, in addition to ASMP, PPA has got their local chat, their affiliates. You've got local camera clubs. You've got some huge camera clubs, and even though they have the word club in them, may have 40 to 50% professionals that are involved in some of the communities around the country. Also, I love an idea that Dawn Shields kicked off probably 10, 15 years ago in Missouri. As a wedding photographer, she started hosting a networking luncheon. I believe it was $10. They met someplace locally. She wasn't making any money off of the lunch, but she invited the caterer, the wedding planners, the florists, the limo drivers, the tuck shop, the bridal salon, anybody that had travel agents, anybody that had anything to do with the same target audience, to a networking luncheon where you could just meet and greet and talk about the business and the clients and start to build up a referral base and a stronger network. I mean, so much of our business today, the key word in marketing is relationship building. That's actually 2 words. It's building those relationships. It's not, you can be the rocket scientist all year long on analytics and SEO, and the reality is that if you're not building relationships with potential clients and their families and that client base, what good are all the analytics? So I love the idea of the more people you can meet within that category with the same target audience, not just photographers, but all the other people that have a similar target audience. And to me, it just makes so much sense. I mean, think about the power you would have as a photographer if you happen to be sitting in between, at lunchtime, in between one of the florists in town and a wedding planner, for example. Just being able to talk about the business.
And Lisa, where do you go to find other professionals, either wedding professionals or photographers that you trust to work with?
Well, I think I'm really fortunate here in the DC area. This market is huge, and weddings are huge here. There are several different organizations, much like Skip was saying, that have vendors from every category that meet for lunches or meet for happy hours or meet for dinners. Some of them are exclusive memberships where you're voted in. Some of them are memberships that it doesn't matter. You can pay an extra fee. You can get in anyway. I find some of the bigger events to be not as helpful because it ends up being more of people just passing out business cards and you're not really getting to know them and talk to them. But it does open that door, which is great. The other area that I found that's really worked for me, DC has a great community of photographers. There's a ton of online communities, one of which SmugMug actually had started, and then they're not sponsoring them anymore, but the group still stayed together because everybody enjoyed it. So that's where we go out with photographers. Once a month they host speakers in the evenings. We'll go do a happy hour. And the happy hours, believe it or not, are really good sources. You see people.
Honey, I'm networking, I swear.
Well, it's true. It's just like Skip said. You get to see people, and like you said, Rich, seeing people interact and how they're handling themselves and how they're treating other people, and if they have a martini or two or a margarita, you see that even more. And I think true colors come out even more, and that can open the door to fostering a better relationship and then possibly second shooting with that person, or doing combining forces and doing some sort of styled shoot with that person, some creative collaboration. And then when you really get into working with them, you see how they work, you see how they are with their clients, you see how they are with your clients if they're shooting for you. And you get a really good sense of if this person would be good to bring on as an associate, or if this person is just a solid referral that I know if I can't do something for that, this client will be happy with what they did and they won't regret their decision, and they won't look bad on me. You know, if I send somebody to somebody who does a horrible job, then that looks just as bad on me as it does on that person who did a bad job.
So now, we've offered a lot of advice today about things like referrals, about asking clients for referrals, collaborating with others. We've talked about, the value in going to these live shows. Lisa, if you had to, if you had the opportunity to write yourself a top 5 list, you were able to send yourself a note back to where you started of things you wish you would have paid attention to sooner, what would you put on that list? Now think about it for a second. I'll offer 2, and maybe Skip, you can think of, things you would have said to yourself, 10 years ago for business. For me, one of them would have been, don't underestimate the presence of having a creative space. You just invested in a studio, I just invested, I'm really finding that controlling my environment has such a huge output on my creativity. And that doesn't necessarily mean buying something. It just means taking the time to establish a place where you're going to work, that the work environment really does affect the work. Another thing that I would say is that something that I've learned both the hard way, and usually I've been good at it, but the few times I haven't, it's come back surprisingly bad, is remember that every finished business relationship is going to have impact on what comes next. Whether that is something that you've ended, you've burned a bridge. Can you burn the bridge nicely, or can you just, can you close the gate without blowing up the bridge? Reminding myself that the ramifications of when the job is done. There's so much that happens with referrals, and you got to be careful. Skip, anything you want to throw out there, and then we'll let Lisa share some knowledge with her past self.
Yeah, if I look back on my own experiences, and this still comes up sometimes, not as much anymore because I'm supposedly wiser. I know I'm older. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There are so many things that I can think of that I was frustrated with in different projects and things that I might have been working on, and just felt I had to do it all myself. And usually what would happen is I'd do it myself, and then Rich, I'd call our mutual buddy Scott and say, all right, I really screwed up the site now. What do I do? Fix it for me. The other thing that is really important that I do have an appreciation for now is we've all got a point where we start to hit the breaking point. We don't realize it. We're working too hard. It may not even seem like we're working too hard, but it's on our minds all the time. And if I've learned nothing else since I went out on my own in 2009, it's that you've got to recognize the signs of crashing and burning. And when you're getting to that point, you've got to respect yourself enough to walk away from the business for a couple hours. Maybe it's walk away for a day. You've got to be able to shut down. Rich, you do a great job of focusing on your family and establishing your priorities, and other things we've talked about on other programs like this, where you start to really think about your definition of success. And yeah, money is great, but you also have to wake up smiling every day. So I wish going way back that I had recognized and had an appreciation for the fact that I didn't have to do it all in a day. I didn't have to be at the top of my game all the time, and when I wasn't, it's okay to walk away from the business and just walk out of the office, or take your camera. I have so many photographers that I'll be talking to, and they're just tired of the way they shoot. And this is where I happen to love special projects, because it keeps your creative spirit alive over why you got into photography in the first place, even though you might be doing something totally mundane to pay the mortgage.
Okay. Lisa, a couple things you'd share with yourself if you can go back in time.
Well, I think Skip definitely hit the nail on the head with the defining your own success. I think it's easy in photography to get caught up with all the flashy visuals that we all create. and what somebody else is doing, and social media making it seem so grand and it making you feel like you're inadequate with what you're doing. So I think I would have told myself to go back and write my own definition of what I wanted my success to be. And when I was feeling down and feeling frustrated or that I'd hit a wall, I could have that to go refer back to and be like, oh, if my definition of success, am I able to take a nice vacation with my family? Am I able to go for a hike if I want to? Am I able to go, in my case, I do a lot of volunteering with horseback riding therapeutically. And, if I'm able to do all those things and give back, yeah, I'm successful. I'm happy. That's great. And that does wonders for your self-esteem to be able to define your own success and remind yourself that you are meeting your success and that your success is not dependent upon anybody else's success. So that would be one. Another would definitely be don't be afraid to ask. I know I said that earlier. Ask for pricing, ask for feedback, ask for referrals, anything. Don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing that can happen is someone says no. I mean, it's not the end of the world. You move on, or you get some negative feedback. You take it, you process it, and you do it better. And you're better for it. So it's not the end of the world, even if you think it might be negative.
One more.
Not selling myself too low. Just remembering, I know I wrote an article about it on Photo Focus about remembering your worth. And that goes into guarding your time and your personal time. And it's easy to, when you're your own boss, to be like, well, I'm not working, I'm not making money, and I'm not going to pay my mortgage, and then I'm not going to have food, and then I can't do this, and then I can't do that, and then it's all going to spiral, and it's going to be this like big atomic bomb that goes off. But it's unhealthy. You need to switch up your brain. You need to change which neurons are firing. You need to have a day off. It's okay to take a day off. You'll be better for it. You'll be more focused for it. You're going to be more creative for it, and then therefore be more successful for it.
Yeah, no, that's some great advice. I went through that very same scare this past weekend when I went camping, and I kind of remember from the past year, I was like, oh yeah, I'm actually offline for 2 days. I'm in a place where about once a day the cell phone would beep with a message that got through, and I'm like, I'm off the grid. And for those who know me, it's pretty hard for me to be off the grid, but I wouldn't trade having those 2 days with some friends and family and that experience. And that is part of the definition of success. Well, this has been great to have you. I want to announce our winner, and then we'll give people some ways to stay in touch. We ran it through the random number generator, and question number 3 came from Stephanie Cannon Widmack. And
Yay!
Stephanie, you are the winner of a year of the Creative Cloud, the Photographer's Plan from Adobe Creative Cloud, which will give you access to Photoshop and Lightroom, the latest versions. Lightroom was just updated, and also some other great stuff in there, some mobile apps. So just drop me a line at rich@photofocus.com, and I'll get you connected so you can win that. So Stephanie, thank you very much for tuning in. And
Yay,
for everyone else who joined us live, if you didn't catch the whole show, this will be available almost instantly on YouTube, and we'll also post it to Photo Focus, and Skip will send it out to his audience as well. It's available, so you can pass this on to other folks. We hope you got some practical business advice today. And as always, feel free to post other questions in the comment section. I'm sure Lisa has the same problem I do, which is we're always looking for new ideas for articles. Skip, it's the
Yes.
same way. So ask those questions.
Always.
It gives
Ask
us
questions, please.
gives us new ideas. So Lisa, where can folks get in touch with you if they want to follow up?
They can email me at my business email, info@lovesomephoto.com, or they can hit me up on Twitter. My handle is @LisaLovesPhoto.
Great, and thank you so much for joining us. Skip, where can people find you?
Oh, they'll find me at skipcohenuniversity.com and Skip Cohen on Twitter and Skip Cohen on Facebook. And okay, Rich, where are they going to find you?
Sure. So you can check me out over at photofocus.com. I'm the publisher over there, and my social media handle is usually RedPixel, RedPixel. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. This is a great conversation, and really appreciate both our guests being here today and co-host Skip. Thank you guys so much also who came out and asked questions and hung with us live. We really appreciated you coming by. Thanks again.